Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's programme, we'll bring you the Irishman that's helping Qatar import thousands of cows. This amid political Saudi-led restrictions imposed on the country. A 55% increase in international tourism in Egypt. Observers say security concerns are no longer keeping visitors away. Also coming up, what colour is your passport? Yemeni photographer Thana Faroq joins us from Amsterdam to talk about the experiences of people hindered by their passports. We start with the largest public display of discontent in Iran since the disputed elections that shook the country back in 2009. At least 21 people died after brutal clashes between protesters and security forces over the economy and corruption. This during more than a week of demonstrations which are now waning. According to one lawmaker, some 3,700 people have been arrested. That's some 10% of those that took to the streets. Now, since the blockade of the country led by Saudi Arabia back in 2017, Qatar has been looking to other resources. The mastermind of one of those schemes involving cows is 58-year-old Irish farmer John Dore. Here's a report by our correspondents on the ground.
An hour's drive from Doha, in the middle of the desert, this farm has become a symbol for the country's economic independence. It's called Baladna, or Our Country in Arabic, and recently it's been revving up its production. Since the Saudi embargo on Qatar came into force last June, more than 4,000 cows have been imported by plane, and this brand new automatic milking machine is now the largest in the Middle East. Supervising this €800 million project is John Dore, an Irish farmer. By next June, this farm aims to have 14,000 milk cows.
Primarily, we're going to make Qatar self-sufficient in milk. But an add-on is we're going to make Qatar self-sufficient in beef as well. Because 14,000 cows will produce 14,000 calves every year, roughly.
It's eyeing further expansion, but the farm is already producing 100 tons of milk every day, used to make various products that are sold at supermarkets across the country. The farm's director says the embargo has meant investments are up and the competition has disappeared.
The short term and long term. As far as I'm concerned, long live the blockade. It's good for business.
Backing the farm is a well-known industrial family of billionaires. Aged just 29, Mohammed Al Khayat already heads a dozen businesses. Today, he's showing us around Doha's industrial zone, which is booming.
Since the 5 months ago until now, there's more than 300 factories under construction.
His group has invested in a cross-section of the Qatari economy. This is their aluminium factory, managed by his Syrian partner. Here, almost 1,000 workers are manufacturing windows and metal structures. Management says that orders have jumped by 30% since the start of the blockade.
It's fully made in Qatar.
And you're proud of it?
Of course, this is like something you are doing. Of course you will be proud of it.
And with Qatar needing to build stadiums for the 2022 World Cup, demand is only set to grow.
A lot of factories start construction now, in these days. Even everybody is saying it's blockage, how they are starting. No, this is the right time to start, actually.
In the midst of a nationalist growth spurt, Qatar is developing its economy at full speed. Saudi Arabia's economic blockade of the world's richest country per inhabitant might do Qatar more good than harm in the end.
To Egypt, where the most serious challenger to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has withdrawn from the country's presidential race. That's Ahmed Shafiq, a former prime minister who narrowly lost the vote to Muslim Brotherhood candidate Mohammed Morsi back in 2012. With another aspiring candidate in prison, Sisi is virtually guaranteed to run for and win a second term. Now, Egyptians will take to the ballot boxes over 3 days in March amid both economic malaise and a heavy clampdown on dissent. Staying with Egypt, the country has been witnessing an uptick in tourism, particularly travellers from France. According to the French Union of Tour Operators, figures jumped 146% over the period of 12 months. Now, as France 24's Delano D'Souza explains, the tourism industry is a key source of hard currency for that Middle Eastern nation.
A tourism revival is underway in Egypt. Shrugged by tourists for the past 7 years, the turnaround is a much-needed boost for the sector. Egypt has a lot to offer holidaymakers, including a good climate, the desert and the sea. To lure tourists back, authorities needed to place security front and center. For a one-week holiday in Egypt, this family opted for the Red Sea.
Allez, let's go!
Allez.
It's one of the best diving destinations in the world, and its coral reefs have regenerated with the decline in tourism.
It's magnificent. There's a lot of colour. We saw many different types of fish.
It's really worth flying 4.5–5 hours to see this.
Egypt was the third most visited country for French tourists. But those numbers declined as the security situation worsened. From 600,000 French arrivals in 2010, the number plunged to just 70,000 in 2016. The recent turnaround, however, means hotels are filling up.
It was only in 2017 that we heard French being spoken again. Direct flights were put in place, and today we see that there are more French tourists.
Beefing up security at seaside resorts reassures tourists that safety remains a priority. In high season, 10,000 vacationers reside in hotels in the town of El Gouna. Here, security personnel patrol the streets, and tourists say they feel safe.
There's not much more risk here than elsewhere.
They tell us which areas to avoid. You need to go with a guide and avoid going alone. But there's no more risk here than elsewhere.
Tourism represents 12% of Egypt's GDP, and the sector employs 3 million people. Yursi is a francophone tour guide who saw his salary cut with the drop in French arrivals. The increase in the number of visitors means his income has doubled to 1,300 euros a month.
For years, I did one visit every 2 weeks with small groups. Today, I give tours 3 to 4 times a week, and each time it's a bus filled with French tourists.
Egypt wants to return to its place as a leading tourism destination, and authorities say they want to see the same rate of tourist arrivals from 7 years ago by next winter.
Thana Faroq is a Yemeni photographer who escaped the conflict in her country 2 years ago. She's currently living in the Netherlands, where she's working on The Passport, a project that documents the experiences of those that weren't born in the lucky borders. Now, in this project, the 27-year-old photographs refugees in camps across Europe, mainly from the countries that Donald Trump imposed the Muslim travel ban on. That includes Syria, Yemen and Iran, amongst others. The photographs and handwritten letters from her subjects have been displayed at various exhibitions. They'll also be published in a photo book. Thana joins us today from Amsterdam. Thana, you yourself are, of course, from Yemen. This is a country that's been very much in and out of conflict for years now. At what stage in your life did you realize that you don't hold that so-called perfect passport?
Well, I've always felt this notion of being trapped in my country, and I would consider it as a curse. I would feel it strongly whenever I intend to travel or just apply for a visa. And it became a reality, and I got used to it, but it was that moment where the war erupted in Yemen and the conflict escalated. It felt like a huge prison for me and for a lot of Yemenis, and it felt that I literally isolated, lonely. The war suddenly ignores you, and it was the moment where I felt, I started to question why I wasn't born in the lucky border, why I'm not having that perfect passport, basically.
Now, why did you decide to focus on refugees from countries targeted by Trump's Muslim travel ban in this project?
Well, if you think about it, people of those countries, we're speaking here about Syria, Yemen, Eritrea, etc., they experience extreme conditions of violence, poverty, aggression, and all sorts. And to me, this ban or this decision adds so much to the burden already, and it adds a lot to their struggle for freedom of movement, and the passport ultimately becomes a tool that prevents you from traveling, which is totally opposite the idea of having you, like, it goes against the idea of being proud of it, of being identified with something that is unique and powerful. It goes against this idea, and as I said, it becomes a burden on everyone that is coming from those countries.
Now, I'm sure on this journey, this Project Passport, you've come across hundreds, if not thousands, of refugees. Can you tell us briefly the story of one of them that really touched you?
It's hard to focus on one story. There are so many people that I met and coming from different backgrounds, and each one of them has something unique that added to the book. But stories of stateless have touched me the most. Most of these people have been refugees twice in their lives, and if you think about it, when you listen to their journey, you feel the word is so unfair and painful. I don't know, it felt... to them, you don't exist, you don't belong to anywhere. So these stories have touched me the most, and I've interviewed a lot of people who were stateless.
Now, you've previously compared your photography to Anne Frank's diary. Can you very quickly talk us through that?
For Anne, writing was escape. It was a window to express her frustration or anything that came to her mind when she was young. And to me, photography does the same thing, a window or an escape, a tool where I make sense of everything around me, and I visually translate my thoughts and frustration or anger I put them into photographs and words. So that's where I feel we both share something.
Thana Faroq, a photographer from Yemen, thank you so much for speaking to Middle East Matters.
Thank you, Sanam.
Well, that's it for this edition of the show. Don't forget you can follow our latest on both Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching.